Terry, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mickey Barber.
Here.
Ray DeCosimo.
Here.
Carol Hoffman. Scott Leroy.
Here.
Gretchen Potts.
Here.
Ben Smith.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it feels like January in Tennessee out there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Chancellor for remarks.
I want to thank you for coming, and we're figuring this out too. This is a new board for us, and today I think we've got a good summary budget, and strategic plan falls under your purview. Dr. Brown is also going to talk about the state audit of the UT Board of Trustees, the performance audit that was recently made public. And and since we do have some coffee, Carol, if you want to warm up, and
Thank you.
we're just at the very
I think
beginning.
that's a good
here.
idea.
You poured in your
Um,
shoes.
And there are a lot of great things happening. Last week, we had our academic night for intercollegiate athletics, and the number of students, they were like 1.5 times around the court of basketball lining up. Emily Blackman and her group of academic coaches for our student athletes have done an incredible job. And I know, talking to Frank Reed, our softball coach, 20 of 22 students were 3.0 or above. Soccer was the same way. I think they had one student. There's just, football had its highest ever GPA. So there's a lot of great things going on. And our men's team won that night. It was a fun game. So there's a lot of good things happening, but not knowing how long this will take, I will refrain from going on. Be glad to answer any questions at any point or at the end if you would like. So
The minutes have been mailed. They're also in your packet. They were emailed. May I have a motion to accept the minutes
moved.
as mailed?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Dr. Brown,
Yes, sir.
could you tell us about the 2021 budget?
We will do that. This presentation, of course, is in your packet as you follow along. Just let me start by thanking a few people. I want to thank Tyler Forrest and Chris Serviceman, as well as Allison Evans, for their continuing work on the university budget. To date, we're going into the third quarter of this year's budget. We're financially in good shape. Everything looks good as we look to close this budget out. But I wanted to bring you up to date with a quick mid-year look at the university budget and financial support. In our revised budget on the revenue side, a total of about $204 million, almost $205 million make up the revenue portion of the budget. Of course, tuition and fees account for almost 60% of that revenue, $120 million of that. State appropriations is still strong at almost $60 million at 29%. Again, putting that in the context of southern states, that's very, very healthy. Tennessee continues to do very, very well with state appropriations. If you look at North Carolina, South Carolina, even Alabama and Mississippi, you see a major decline in state appropriations. So we're holding our own in Tennessee. Say hello to the governor and tell him to keep it coming. So auxiliary services, another 10% of the budget, and other sources in sales and grants and contracts make up a little better than about $5 million, but a total of about $204 million. How we're expensing that money out right now, this $204 million, of course, the majority of it should be going towards the academic enterprise. Almost 40% now, 83 million of it is in instruction. That's a strong, strong number. When you look across the state comparatively at peers in the state, you'll see anywhere from 31 to 35%. We're doing very, very well in terms of the provost should be happy that we're sending almost 40% of that revenue to the academic side of the house. When you also look at research and academic support, you'll see better than 52% of the overall budget goes toward the academic enterprise. And I'm very pleased to say that's what we do at the university. It is about teaching and research and learning. Auxiliaries bring up about 10%. Scholarships, we'll talk a little bit more about that, at about 14 million or 6% of the budget. Institutional support, that's folks like myself in the room that help run the place, about 8% of the budget, and the physical plant, another 10% of the budget. So we think that we're doing very, very well. You can also see another 9% in academic support. That's everything from deans to the provost staff and research support entities within academic affairs. As we look at our planning for next year for 21, here's the areas of focus we continue to be concerned about. We had a big contingency. The chancellor took a busload of us to Houston for SAC COC reaccreditation as we start down that road. These, over the next 2 years, you will see a strong focus on reaffirmation of accreditation. This happens every 10 years from a regional accrediting agency. The provost and the leadership team of the campus will be working on something called the PEP, the QEP, the Quality Enhancement Project, and that'll require some investments. Full funding of the formula, the governor will speak shortly, and we're hoping that he will continue to support full funding of our appropriations formula. You're going to see why that's important as I show you on our revenue side. Campus safety and security, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because that's what this performance audit was all about. Our investments there, we're going to continue to have some institutional focus on this as we move further investments in that area. Graduate enrollment, we're going to continue to talk about that. We reduced graduate out-of-state tuition some 50%, but we must recruit stronger in regards to out-of-state graduates. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Having a competitive enrollment management plan with the disaggregation of public higher education in Tennessee, it's a very competitive higher ed environment. Everyone's after the same students, and you'll look around Chattanooga and you'll see billboards from every university in the state right in our backyard because it's very competitive. But we'll be talking about that. I'm glad Dr. Freeman is here. This whole competitive enrollment management plan. Competitively funding scholarships, we'll talk a little bit about that. The UT Promise, a big program that the UT president has put forward. We're having to fund that here, and we don't see any major problems with that at all. Key academic positions, the provost is evaluating all of the academic side of the house, and you'll see us come forward in the budget supporting key academic positions throughout the curriculum here at the university. Faculty and staff compensation benchmarking, there's a huge system-wide compensation benchmarking plan that they have ongoing. The results of that should be available in March, and we'll take a look to kind of see how competitive we really are with regards to compensation benchmarking.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? In relation to that, is that the emails that we got asking about sending benchmarks for faculty who've been on national committees, faculty who have done teaching pedagogy, those kind of benchmarks, or is it something different?
No, it is different.
Than that
That
came from
particular
the
email
system.
came from the system,
Okay,
and they're just trying to keep track of.
I just want to make sure they
those
weren't
kinds of
using that for
faculty
compensation.
activities.
So.
No.
Okay.
No, this is a national firm that's doing
Okay.
a benchmarking study. Student housing growth, we just opened up a new 600-bed residence hall. It's full, so we're going to be talking about another one at the end of the day. New campus strategic and master plans. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's that time again. And the provost will bring you up to speed on the strategic plan. We'll talk a little bit about the master plans for the campus. Other things that will add to this list, online education, what that will look like for this campus, what will it look like for the University of Tennessee system, as well as IT funding and technology that affects the classrooms. All of that needs, we've got to look at that as an institutional area of focus as we move forward. We're pleased to have a new vice chancellor for technology here, a new CIO on the campus. We're excited about having Vicki here. Maybe we'll bring her in and let you meet her. The chancellor will do that. But I'm sure she will be coming forward with an IT strategic plan that's going to require some investment from us later on in the next probably 6 months or so. Any questions about that? That's kind of what keeps us awake at night. Our budget and planning timeline right now, you'll see we're moving right along. We're right in January. All the divisions now are really finalizing their final budget request. We spent some time as a leadership team meeting with the major divisions of the university, having some real intimate discussions about what they really need in terms of priorities on the budget. They really liked that approach. We got a lot of good feedback. We were able to have good dialogue. The chancellor, the provost, the budget team, and myself met with the deans of all the colleges and all the major operating divisions. So we're heading right now, again, late in this month, the state of Tennessee, the governor's budget will be released, and that will give us some indication of what the state will fund for us. We will take this budget all the way into May, and you will see May 7th, we will come back to the advisory board here and give you what the chancellor's final recommendations are relative to this year's budget and process. And then from there, it will go into the UT Board of Trustees in June for the final approval. That's kind of the process. Always cut
they calling
phone
Tom?
off. Yes, somebody called me. When you talk too long, that's what happens. Let's talk about potential new revenue. Again, in a budget process, there are just revenues and expenses. What are the new revenues that we're looking at? We're recommending a 2% increase in tuition. This is the THEC recommendation. We think that that's likely all you will be allowed to do in the state of Tennessee if you're a public higher ed institution. Is a 2% increase. Will generate about $1.6 million for us. We also have slower in 4, 15 and 4 tuition dollars, about $2.2 million there. This got approved by the UT board and THEC. We're calling it SOAR in 4. These are the funds that we utilize to make sure students can graduate in 4 years. Helps us with having enough courses and enough teaching faculty on the ground and academic support, tutors, and all of that from that SOAR in 4 budget. State appropriation, again, CCTA formula, productivity growth is projected at 2.1 million for UTC. We continue to be at the top of the state in outcome productivity. And I'm hoping we'll come back and lead the state next year. Numbers really look good for us, but our recommendation is 2.1 million. Here's a big one, state appropriation. Tyler and I are crossing our fingers and toes and everything. For the first time in a long time, the THEC is recommending 1.2 million to support a 2% compensation pool for us. They seldom do that. Yes.
Can I ask a question about the 2% increase? Is that for the current students who aren't on 15 and 4, or is that for all the current students?
It's all students at the university.
Okay, for some reason I was under the mistake that I thought we were sitting the 15 and 4 students, they weren't seeing an increase over 4 years, so I guess I'm wrong about that. Okay.
The current students are not, it's that's the next phase of the students coming in, which will be all students eventually.
UT Knoxville did this 5 years ago when they instituted this tuition model.
Mm-hmm.
And it was for the first class.
Yeah.
Everybody else afterwards, whatever comes in, it just goes.
Keep going, okay.
And Martin did it the same way. We did it in a discounted, it wasn't a 25% increase,
Right.
it was about 11%.
Right.
And so with that, we ended up with, people would be, we were gonna try and keep everything as low as possible, so 2% is pretty low compared to what you saw
And
10
our
years
current
ago.
students who are not 15 and 4, so the ones who were here last year,
They're held
they
with
will
us.
continue to stay with just like a 2% increase?
Yes.
Okay,
Everybody was grandfathered in.
okay,
Like 23 or 24, something like
okay. Hopefully they graduate by then.
that. Yeah. I'm gonna be in trouble if they're not, so.
They will be, because
Yeah.
they were grandfathered
We'll all have
in
to
for
face
4
them,
years.
right?
That's right, that's right.
So aggregately, new revenue, the recurring revenue, about $7.1 million that will come to the table. On the expense side of the house, how we propose right now in the budget process that we will expense out that $7.1 million. Of course, academic programs and student support get a major piece of that, about 3 million of that. Scholarships, about almost 722,000. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Salary and benefits, this is a big one. To aggregate up that 2% pool will be about $2.2 million to make that happen. Of course, a small bit for institutional support, leaving an unallocated amount of about $1 million. That's what we're chasing in the budget. Everybody's chasing that $1 million. The reality of life is what I'm saying to the provost and the chancellor here is that some of that probably needs to move right up to scholarships, because we had to increase scholarship awards to stay competitive and to keep our enrollment up. So we will be probably recommending some of that amount to support scholarships. Don't know how much yet, we're just evaluating that as we move forward. So we do project a balanced budget from the revenue that we have in right now.
So Richard, when we talk about academic programs, for those of us who haven't been
Okay.
in school for a while,
Yeah.
are we talking about new majors, new?
This is everything from new
Degrees,
faculty
new-
positions. We have a new program on the academic side of the house, all the above, in all the colleges. These are new faculty lines and
Okay.
position support across the institution.
Dr. Brown, excuse me, you've finished with Scott?
Oh, yeah.
Did I answer that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you, in order to facilitate the 15-4 structure, are you having to add additional instructors so that people can take the classes that they need to take in 4 years?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a bulk of the money that's being spent in that regard. A lot of these are lecturers or instructors that we're adding right now until we assess really what permanent faculty we need. But we do have a predictive model where we can say we need 10 more sections of English to make sure that Yancey and the provost work hand in hand to make that happen with the deans. The last thing we want is a kid paying those dollars and can't get a class.
Richard, can I go back just a minute to revenue? I realize we're not a research university, but it just seems to me, I see grants, 531, that seems like a fairly low figure. Is that comparable to what we've been doing? It just seems to me it ought to be higher than that.
It will increase throughout the course of the year at the end of, but we have a stronger focus. I'll let the provost talk a little bit
We're
about it.
about 12 million.
Yeah, about 12 million.
500,000.
It says here 500,000
I
grants.
think that's overhead.
Hmm?
Is that overhead?
That's just the overhead,
It's just the overhead.
yeah.
No, is it under expense or revenue?
You got it under revenue.
Okay, that's the overhead.
That's just the overhead, I'm sorry.
So the rest of the money goes to the grantee.
So tuition fees, that's not overhead, that's the, I mean, it's like we're talking about apples, maybe educate me a little bit what you mean overhead versus.
Slice out, if you get a $100,000 grant, some portion of that is to cover the academic administrative costs of the university.
Of operating the
$5,000.
university.
That's
The
expense,
office is
that's
the-
expense,
Yeah,
that's
but
not
that's
revenue.
But it's in new revenue in terms of coming into the university as opposed to going out to some
Give
Okay.
it-
specific lecturer.
All right.
$100,000 grant for the study of frogs. 5,000 of that may come back to the institution as revenue to cover the building that the frogs are in. The other 95,000 goes toward the research.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
kind of how that.
It's much
Just
bigger
quick-
than that.
quick
If it's a federal
Yeah,
grant, it's
it's,
more like
it's
49.
40 something,
yeah.
yeah, it's like 40-something percent.
Yeah.
That you have to write into the grant. So let's say you only want 50,000, most grants for 50,000 are more like $95,000 grants
Yeah.
because the rest of that money is overhead that goes to the university.
Okay.
Where are we,
Let's pay the
on this
light
year's budget? We're at 205 million through December. Are we tracking, are we gonna generate more of a surplus? Are we absolutely, did we foresee everything with 100% accuracy and everything is where it should be?
We're close. We're tracking very well. We may have a little bit of a surplus at the end of this because of vacant positions and things like that, but we're tracking very well on the expense side.
With the number of students that were planned, did we hit our budget?
Yeah, but to meet the budget, it's not just the number, it's how many were fully Pell eligible, How many are we providing, our full fee payers? How many are we providing scholarships to? So it's really complex
Yeah,
where
I can imagine.
we take a, you know, it's a very sophisticated prediction. It's not a guess, but in a way, it's a informed estimate. And we actually had more students where we offered financial aid packages that took us up on it.
This time.
That we owe some financial aid, that
Right.
we're redirecting some funds to make it work.
Yeah.
Because that's the highest priority, students came, but you never know if you offer 100 students a scholarship, you know, we may predict that we're gonna get 67 of those, but, I mean, this year it was like 75, and so, we still have to pay that, even though in the past we wouldn't have had as high an
And
acceptance rate.
It hit us in both ways too. Not only did we have more students accept, we had more students continue, meaning more students maintained, which meant, I mean, that's always a good sign because those students are excelling academically and continuing to go to the next level, and so it's all about progression for us as well. So both of those things happened, you know, in this year that sort of threw my wonderful predictive model off, you know, from being able to be accurate, you know, completely accurate, so.
That's why Richard mentioned that rebudgeting some of that $1 million circle, you know, that we're looking at for this coming year may need to go into financial aid.
Yes.
So some of these that you offer, you don't necessarily have all that funding in reserves. You basically, in reserves, have what you've predicted based on trends.
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct.
It's a good problem to have, so if they progress on the back end of this, CCTA, the formula will actually pay you for that. If you can continue to get these kids through, it's a real win-win, we can do that.
Well, and there's also some investment in those students who are coming in at, you know, doing a discount rate for those students for what they bring to the campus overall in terms of, you know, the 4 years period of time that they're here, the dollars that you get back from the progression of those students, what they do in terms of housing, and I mean, just all of those areas that they contribute. You know, I've been talking to Chancellor Provost and also to Dr. Brown about this is a great investment for us overall to be able to get those students here because what they continue to return to the campus, even in terms of reputation for those students marching toward degree is, you know, is a wonderful addition to the campus.
Any other?
Speaking of retention, where are we now versus where we were 5 years ago?
So overall in first year retention rate, we're still up significantly from where we were 5 years ago in terms of first year retention rate. This past year, I think it was at 72% for our first time freshman students. We want to and believe that we can be a campus at 80% overall. So it continues, the number continues to go up. We did go back just a little bit this past semester, so we're reframing sort of our approach around that first year retention rate and also building some things in our second year program around what we do for second year students. The majority of dollars go to first year folks, and so we were getting some feedback from second year students that, hey, what about me? You know, and so we're building some things around second year experience for those students as well.
Foundation, I think Vicki and I were on the board, and the foundation made some grants for RAs to knock on doors and suggest there was a correlation between going to class and graduating in 4
Right.
years.
Right.
And I think it had a fairly quick impact.
It did. You're talking about the house calls program where we had faculty and staff
I'm
go.
talking about
and-
knocking on doors and saying, you gotta go to class.
Yeah.
All right, bringing you up to date, I indicated to you last time that we had this voluntary retirement incentive plan. We do this every 4 to 5 years. It's a great business practice where institutions say to employees who are retirement eligible, we've got a retirement incentive program if you would choose to take this. We had 176 eligible employees, 49 submitted applications, 37 signed agreements. We've had this approved now by the CFO of the system, David Miller. We've communicated the approval to the participants in December. All university units have been notified of those employees who have elected to take advantage of this benefit. On a division standpoint, here's how the numbers shake out. 14 faculty members decided to take advantage, and 23 staff members decided to do it, the bulk of which are in academic affairs, one of our largest areas across the campus. At the bottom of the fiscal note at the bottom, total estimated salary dollars impacted and available for reallocation after we implement this program is about $2.6 million, right? When an employee decides to do this, that position comes back centrally to the attention of the chancellor, the provost, and myself, and you really have to make a business case as to do you want that position to go back where it came from? Or can the institution reinvest that position somewhere else? The line is actually kind of frozen for a year because we have to pay the benefit cost out of the existing line. And the benefit is 6 months' salary plus benefits, the annual leave of that employee. If it's a critical position, we'll release it for hire. You can always use non-recurring dollars to start a search if you need to during the interim period. We think this is a good plan. In fact, I've just been contacted by the Big Orange, the university up the road. They're going to present one to the board in February when they come here on our campus. So they think this is a good thing.
So the difference between those approved and those that submitted for review, is that difference those that you simply because of market dynamics felt you could not lose? Or what was the difference in those two numbers?
It was just an individual choice. Some of them made application, but when after they met with the retirement and personnel and HR folks, decided not to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. And many decided to move through the process.
I don't think any of those decisions were ours. I think they were all the employees, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's why it's voluntary. I mean, you had to be real careful with that to make sure it's their decision.
I just thought I remembered us saying that there may be a case or so that you would have, if it, diminished a department so drastically that it would be crippling, that there may be some decisions there, so.
Yeah, legally, we could say to a person, no, you can't, we can't afford to lose you. You must delay this or something like that, based on
But
operational.
you weren't faced with that,
No.
so that's good.
No, not at all.
So in terms of losing 14 faculty, and I presume senior faculty in a year, does that add a bigger burden than normal, or just a slight bump, or is that like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?
It will be challenging in some instances for the upcoming year because of the obligation that the university will have for 6 months of salary and benefits. In the long run, what will happen is we will probably have a net gain of 2 or 3, we'll have a net gain in funding that will allow for 2 or 3 additional faculty lines to be created. Essentially what we're doing is, in most instances, we will be replacing someone, if you look at their career trajectory, who is near the end of their career or at the end, with someone who's just getting started in terms of their career trajectory, and the salary savings there will allow us to increase the number of faculty in strategic areas. So far, if I can add one other thing to Dr. Brown's comments, there were a couple of faculty positions where we approved immediate recruitments, and they were in areas where there were accreditation concerns, disciplinary accreditation concerns over the faculty positions that had been lost.
On the administrative side, 10 of them really were in my area, and it gives us an opportunity to look at organizational realignments. Do I need that position back? Does it need to look like that? Can I combine divisions to really do some cost savings, or reinvest those funds in other strategic areas? So it gives you a great opportunity, flexibility in your budget.
With your benefit package, what portion is employer-sponsored versus employee-paid premiums? Do you know that combination?
Gosh, we,
41%
41% cost, right?
is our employer contribution on
Okay.
average for the South.
Just a quick update on out-of-state tuition reduction plans. Again, we did this in 2019. Domestic graduate out-of-state tuition was reduced by 50%. I started fussing about how we're gonna recruit and what about our marketing plan. So in your packet, my dreams were fulfilled. University Relations did a great job, thank you, with coming up with some marketing materials for those states that border Tennessee. And this is some really great information there. I was very, very pleased that we are out there now marketing and trying to recruit to make sure we can hit the break even to make this revenue neutral if we can. All of the out-of-state students will pay the current rate. Our regional counties tuition dollar impact will be zero at the end of the day. So we're very pleased with this. Just about every public university in Tennessee, they're also doing these out-of-state tuition reduction plans, trying to make us more competitive with regional states as we compete for students and headcount. Very quickly, some other items. I always want to keep you cued into the capital projects on the campus. We've got about 45, almost 46 million, 9 projects of construction in progress. Another 9 that are in the design phase of about 75 million. 13 that have been approved for funding at about 8 million small projects, but a total of almost $130 million of capital projects ongoing on the campus right now. So you're watching your campus transform really before your eyes. If you've taken a look at what we've done in the last 8 years, you see major changes in the infrastructure on the campus as we continue these projects.
Is, what amount of that is Lupton?
The actual 45 million up there is part of the Lupton piece, the Lupton Library.
How much is the total?
37 million, 37 point something.
I think it was like 25 when they first.
Yeah, it grew, didn't it? One of the things I know you'll be interested in is the master planning of the campus, and that's part of the charge for this advisory committee is to make sure you pay some attention in terms of advising us with regards to master planning the campus. We've revised our projected schedule. The provost will be engaging in a strategic plan update. He's already started. He's hit the ground running with that. We think that'll take 3 to 4 months, so we push back the master plan to July of 2020 to begin that process to align better with the strategic plan of the campus, right? But you can see it as we roll down July. We're going to be advertising an RFQ to get a planner on board in August. We'll have proposals back September. We'll have a recommendation to the State Building Commission in October of 2020, a request from the SBC to approve and award the actual master planner for the campus. We think this is going to cost $500,000 to get a national firm in to help us with this. The projected schedule for it, November of 2020, we'll negotiate contracts. This is a long process. December of 2020, setting up meetings and processes. January of 2021, the master planning project duration, we'll look at that. We think it'll be 7 to 18 months based on how many meetings that we have to do for an entire year. Master planning project duration, campus approval, and then January of 2022 and June of 2022, formal presentations and approvals. These plans will be reviewed by you first, as an advisory committee, with plenty of recommendations there. And the process will be very, very inclusive, by the way. There'll be internal committee meetings, charrettes, planning charrettes, internal and external to campus. We always plan with our neighbors to make sure that we're not doing things in isolation, right? One year when we did a master plan and we decided to change the directions of the streets to two-way streets, neighbors all around us, I thought they would kill us for that. Turned out to be very good though. But we had to have those discussions. So you see stakeholder meetings, you'll see writings and reviews. It comes back, the final plan will come to the advisory board in 2022. I think Dr. Engel wants at least 2 members of the advisory board to serve on the master planning committee here, Mr. Chair. We'll try not to take up a lot of your time, but we do value your opinion about how we look at the campus. What are some of the things we'll be looking at? We'll be looking at how we utilize our current facilities, the full plant. What percentage are we utilizing our facilities? There'll be a housing master plan, looking at student housing growth. There'll be an athletics plan, a piece of this. We'll take a strong look, a deep dive in the athletic facilities. We'll look at things like architecture. We'll look at landscape planning, everything down to signage on the campus, what that will look like going forward. So it's town and gown relationships are important when you're doing a plan of this magnitude. The plan will then go to the UT Board of Trustees in 2022. THEC will take a look at it. It has to be approved by the board first, then THEC in April of 2022, all the way into the State Building Commission in May of June of 2022. And the chancellor will be there. I'll probably be by his side, but the chancellor will be there presenting these plans, these campus master plans. If the campus does not do this, you will not expect to be funded under the capital project cycle. You must have that master plan in place before the state will allow you a new project. So this plan's important, that we get this, that we do it right. We're excited about it. Facilities guys are always excited about master planning. But if you look around the campus, this is our 3rd master plan for this campus. When we started, we were a drive-up university, 80% commuters. So we wake up with a new plan. We're almost 38% residential and almost $600 million of capital improvements into this campus. A total change, a transformation of the campus. That's what good planning gets you. Any questions about that? Because that'll be one thing you'll be busy with.
Have they changed the formula of non-revenue producing buildings back? I mean, when we did left it was 25%. Did they keep that?
Yeah, there's still some at the state. Yeah, we still have that requirement. Yeah. Again, very quickly, ENG fund balance, this is just an FYI. It stands at 4.48% of unallocated expenditures and transfers, about $8 million, very, very strong. This is a rainy day fund for the campus, an emergency fund, if you would. Looks very good. I think when the accrediting body comes in, they're gonna be very pleased with these numbers when they see this. And it continues to go up every year.
Do you have a goal?
You know, I'd like to get to 10 million. I'd love to see that, but we'll see. We'll see. We're in great shape right now.
What's the guideline? Is there a guideline from the university system?
Yeah, you should be anywhere between 3.5 to 4%. We're a little bit above it right now. Yeah, so we're in great shape. And the auxiliary fund balances, this is things like food services and other auxiliary units, right now at about $900,000, so we're in really good shape there. Very, very good shape as a campus, so the budget is really, really good. I always like to see that we're not leveraged as a campus. Notes and bonds payable, $103 million in 2019. This takes into account the new housing and the new parking garage that's in those numbers. What the accrediting agency will look at is that, do you have a dedicated revenue stream to pay that debt? And the answer is yes on every count. A dedicated revenue stream to pay for the bonded debt. And that's that.
Richard, can I go back one more time?
Yes, sir.
I think this is an absolutely marvelous product. And I'm just wondering, how's it being distributed and to whom? And this is just the best thing I've seen in years.
So we are traveling right now to all points in the states that are highlighted in blue on the map right now. And so we're going to high schools. The Professional Association for Admissions has some that happen in big cities, Atlanta, Birmingham, Huntsville, Jackson, Mississippi, those different places. So we attend those programs and we distribute, this packet of information, and then some of it is direct mail from names that we've purchased through ACT and other formats.
It seems to me that every high school college counselor needs one of these.
Yeah. Yeah, we do some of that when we get to go visit some of the high schools.
Yeah.
We do send and distribute the information to them as well as we sort of renew when they go into the guidance offices, the school council offices. We try to leave packets there so the students can get information as well, so.
Any more questions for Dr. Brown? That's pretty thorough,
Yeah, thank you.
as usual.
Thank you. All right.
The Provost, you're on.
Okay. The materials that I have for you are a 2-page handout that's in your folder. And I'll talk about those in a minute. If I may add one other thing about the recognition of our student athletes in that entire evening, the other evening, I just want to point out that the evening began on a very strong note as well when one of our faculty members, Dr. Potts, delivered the national anthem that night, and it was absolutely fantastic. So it was a good evening from start to finish for us. With regard to the strategic planning process, the life of the current strategic plan, which runs through 2020, is winding down and coming to an end. Chancellor Engel asked me if I would chair the process for the new strategic plan, and I was excited about the possibility of doing that. I have gotten a lot of assistance and guidance early on from Tom Griscom, and most of you will remember that Tom led the effort for the current strategic plan. In those conversations with him and also my conversations with the Chancellor, we believe that the university is in a dramatically different place now than it was when that strategic plan was put into place. The most dramatic change, I believe, is in the nature of the relationship between the university and the larger Chattanooga community. At the time that we were doing the last strategic planning process, I think we were in a much, I would say, less good place with the community than we are currently. And so one of the things that you'll notice as you look through these materials, if you were to see Tom's strategic planning timeline, this is much more abbreviated in nature. The committee is a much smaller committee by, I believe, 7 or 8 people than the last one, and the nature of the listening sessions and meetings that we will be hosting is also somewhat different. And I think that's to the credit of the campus leadership, especially the leadership that precedes me in bringing us to that different place. When the first step in the strategic planning process was to put together a strategic planning steering committee. The composition of that committee appears on the first of the sheets in the 2-sheet handout that I provided to you. What I did to make sure that every division of the university was represented is to reach out to all of the vice chancellors and then in turn to all of the deans and ask them for recommendations in some instances of staff members in their division, in other instances of faculty members in their division. You will also see that the Employee Relations Council, which is one of our 2 staff entities on campus, and then the Exempt Staff Council, which is the other of the 2 staff entities on campus, are represented. Our students are represented, as they were the last time as well, by both including the Graduate Student Association president and then the Student Government Association president in that process as well. So that is the committee. You'll notice that there are 3 to be determines, And that is because this entity is supposed to have is weighing in on the strategic plan. And so we want to give you the opportunity to have representation on the steering committee. And then we also are still waiting on a representative to be named from the University of Chattanooga Foundation. But that is the committee based on the recommendations from the vice chancellors and deans. Those invitations were extended. I automatically extended the invitations to the two student organizations, to the faculty senate, and also to the staff organizations. And then on the second page, you'll see what is probably a pretty aggressive timeline, but it is a timeline that I believe that we can meet. If you look at the current strategic plan, and it is easy to find online, there are 4 basic tenets to it. One of them has to do with instructional excellence and guaranteeing our students the kinds of educational experiences that will serve them well after they leave the university. A second has to do with increasing or improving the university's research profile. To get back, Justice Barker, to the question that you raised earlier, relative to the amount of grant funding that's coming in, research opportunities for our students and things of that sort. A third tenet or goal of the strategic plan relates to being good stewards of the resources that we have, and relates to philanthropic giving and some of the things that are related to the UC Foundation. And then the fourth one relates to ensuring that our campus is a diverse and inclusive campus. One of the reasons that I believe that this aggressive timeline is feasible for us is because it's hard for me to see any of those basic tenets changing radically. I think we would be hard pressed to find anyone on campus who would say, striving for educational excellence, that's so 2016 to 2020, we really don't need to do that anymore. Or, trying to bring in or increase our grant profile and our research profile is not something that the university needs to do. So I think that this is going to be much more a refresh than it is going to be a start from scratch and move forward. And that's the reason that I'm convinced that we can meet this timeline. If we don't meet this timeline by the end of the academic year, then what I would like to have is I would like to have drafts of a strategic plan circulated with feedback gathered so that we can continue to write on it over the summer. And then very early in the fall semester, we can bring it back to the university community again and its various constituent parts and gain approval for the strategic plan as we move forward. So those are the two things that I had for you today, the steering committee on page 1 and the aspirational strategic planning timeline on page 2. What questions can I answer for you?
Hearing none.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so, how did you select the departments and the representatives that you have?
Well, first of all, I used the materials from that I got from Tom from the last go-round. And if you'll notice, every single division of the university is represented there. So academic affairs is there, administration and finance is there. The chancellor's office is there, enrollment management, student affairs, and so on and so forth. Within the academic enterprise, I thought it was important for us to have representatives from each of the academic units, so each of the colleges, including the Honors College and including the library. And so what happened was I reached out to the deans and said, this is going to be a very important process for us to identify goals that the university will try to pursue over the next 5-year period of time. please make sure that the recommendation that you give me or the nomination that you give me is someone that you think can help us set appropriate goals, and the deans were very accommodating, as were the vice chancellors. And so that's how that happened. This is really not just a strategic plan for the academic enterprise. It is a strategic plan for the entire campus, and for that reason, I believe that it was important, and there was certainly tradition to do that anyway, to make sure that we had student voices and staff voices that were included in the process as well. So that's essentially how we came to this list.
Do we have an analysis of how we met the what we accomplished in the strategic plan that I remember when Tom went on?
Yes, and so online, if you go to the university's homepage and then just type in strategic plan, it will take you to a series of pages and links related to the strategic plan, one of which is a year-by-year analysis, complete with data about how we have done with each of those identified goals. Of the 4 goals, unfortunately, the one where I think we have performed least well is the goal related to the university's desire to be a diverse and inclusive campus. We have actually taken steps backward in that regard over the last 10 years, not just the last 5. And as a campus, I think we have a lot of work to do there. But nearly everything comes complete with a dashboard on our performance. And you'll notice that the area or the goal that has the least data reported is also the goal on which I think we have performed least well.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 opportunities as a board to participate. I mentioned in an email, the master plan and the strategic plan. Sabrina, she told me she wasn't going to be right. She has a preference to participate on the master plan.
Is it something I said?
No. She didn't hear your great pitch. I mean, she might have changed her mind, but too bad she's not here. Do we have any preference with that? I don't think we need to show your hand right now, but I'll, if you like, I'll.
I think Carol had previously volunteered.
I did, for the master plan.
For the master plan. So we have 2 for the master plan.
Certainly be happy to work on the strategic plan. I think, if I remember correctly, the last strategic plan, I was either on the round table or working with the alumni board at the time. I think the chancellor was essentially handed a strategic plan, because you were coming on board just as
We
that
did it.
planning process.
Well, we did it, we hired Tom,
Yeah, it did.
and so that was done after I started.
Okay. I was trying to remember the timing of it. It had been about 5 years, so.
Yeah, it was, I came in 2013, and that was 2015 to 2020. So the time is there, but these are both really important efforts, so.
Without a doubt, when the governor, I know he called each of us, but I mean, he was pretty clear in his, directives. One of those was, to, I'll paraphrase it, was to make sure the university is meeting the educational needs of the region. And so the strategic plan, I think, is certainly pretty vital in that role. And we had about 3 things that were important to him. That was one of them.
Well, I'll join you on the strategic plan. You get a 2 for it says the foundation has somebody to do.
We will tell Mike and figure out what he wants to do. If he wants
Okay.
another person from the foundation, we can do that also.
Probably be a good idea.
problem to say.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's exciting to see what the next 5 years is going to have. Dr. Brown,
Ralph again.
how about the performance audit?
So, about every 5 years, State Comptroller of the State of Tennessee does a performance audit of the University of Tennessee. They really peel the university open and look at all their operating parts. And the Division of State Audit also visits every campus. There are generally 2 to 3 to 4 auditors that come to the campus and ask specific questions about issues. So I wanted to bring this board up to date about the performance audit. In case you get a question, I hope that you will be enlightened about what went on and what the results were, and particularly how it applied to this campus here. So that's what I want to do quickly, give you an overview of that. The performance audit, the general issues that they looked at, one area was UT board oversight. They wanted to make sure that the new University of Tennessee board, their oversight of the university was solid. So they looked at communication and collaboration between the campuses. How strong is the board encouraging communication and collaboration between all the campuses? Satisfaction surveys for faculty, students, and staff. They wanted to know, are you asking the question, what do faculty, students, and staff think about you? So you'll see that. Oversight of UT athletic programs. All athletic programs now require a report to be submitted to the board. The UT promise approval by the board. They had a question about how the UT promise was put into place, and did it need board approval or board oversight to make that happen by the president. Ground leases. That was an issue of a lease that was done at the Health Science Center, and they wanted to know, was this done proper, and should the State Building Commission have been involved in that at the end of the day. Facilities outsourcing oversight by the board. The issue there was that did the board, the prior board, not this current board, because they're just now in place, but did the prior board have proper oversight of the outsourcing decisions on the campus? This was about a 2 to 3 year process. Transparency of interim presidential appointments. Wanted to make sure that there was a process in place for the appointment of the interim president of the University of Tennessee and how that process worked. The other issues was mental health across the University of Tennessee system, investments and assessment of mental health across the system. What are we doing? There's a new state law that campuses must comply with regards to suicide prevention and ideations of suicide. But what were the issues with mental health across the system? Suicide prevention programs and reporting. And a big one was campus safety and security. What investments and improvements to safety and security would have been made across the system. They looked at Clary audit findings, delays in case completions. When you get a Clary investigation, they wanted to know why it takes so long to complete these investigations. Campus police operations, everything from reports to memorandums of understanding with city police, record keeping, staffing levels, security features of the campus. Another bullet was crime logs and Title IX they looked at. A lot of in-depth looks. So I wanted to give this advisory board kind of an overview of what we're doing on the campus with regards to investment in campus safety. I think it's important that you kind of understand that, because you only got a snapshot from this audit of some particular items. So they didn't give you an opportunity to get in depth to say, here's what we really do. So I want to give that to you very quickly. I won't spend a lot of time because you have that. Notification systems for the campus community. If something catastrophic happens on the campus, if there's a weather event, hostage events, anything catastrophic, we've got text alert systems for faculty, students, and staff, and even the parents can sign into our text alert system where we notify folks. We have social media. Our university relations person is there. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. We have a website. We have alertness beacons in our buildings. On the desktops on your computer, if something happens, we take control of that computer screen and tell you what's going on right there in your office. And you can't do anything about it until we release it. So we've got that. telephones, digital signage across campus, campus student information system. We've got a lot of training on the campus, how to stay in the know, what to do to survive during a lockdown, evacuation, stay away or shelter in place. Any type of major event, we're training the campus in that regard. Active shooter, we just spent a lot of time with a lot of divisions on active shooter situations. The audiences for this training, all students, faculty, and staff. We even go out to the offices. We do public forums, group meetings, but if you call, they'll come to your department and do a tailored training event for your division.
One second. When you look at that training for students, is that coming outside of orientation, or is that primarily through orientation?
It's some of it's through orientation, but it's outside of orientation as well. We had a huge call for all students after we met with the Student Government Association to make sure that all students had this training. So I don't know, Robbie said they've done almost 85 sessions right now for students. So I wanted to talk a little bit about police preparedness. This was an issue because inside the audit, they really took a look to say, how safe are the campuses? What about these campus police departments? I thought the president board and the board chair, Compton, did an excellent job with the state comptroller, with Justin Wilson on this. They made an opening statement to pretty much say that the campuses are in good hands. All these departments are state certified. They're all excellent trained police officers on the campus. Did a really good job with that. The legislature was very pleased with that. But the equipment for all of our officers, just take a look at all the training that they go through. Every one of these officers are fully state certified police. They all go through a state certified police academy, just like state troopers on the highway. That's the same training and certification they get. Every campus police officer, on every campus, by the way, across the University of Tennessee. These are some of the things some of the types of training that they get. We recently put body cameras on our police officers. We're one of the few campuses in the state where police officers have body cams, which greatly adds to their effectiveness.
So are they employed by the city or you all?
By us, they're state officers. They're
Okay,
actually
and they have
university employees.
post-certification?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And there's a state statute that empowers campuses to hire certified police. And they must be post-trained, post-certified, right? Campus safety and security projects, there's some ongoing projects. We didn't get a chance to say that during this audit, but there's so many things that we're doing already on all the campuses with regards to keeping the campus safe. We're surveying all of our exterior doors and upgrading electronic access controls. Over the last 3 years, we've spent almost $2 million on putting new doors on these old campus buildings, right? Most of our buildings, 70% are 100 years old or better, so we had to replace all the doors. We actually got a state maintenance award to do that, so we can have card access and remotely be able to lock those doors in the case of an emergency. So right now, there's probably only 2 buildings left for us to complete that whole project. Didn't get a chance to say that to them. Enhancing our communications and dispatch center. You're gonna see our centers is one of probably the best in the state. We're looking at putting mobile data in the patrol cars consistent with what the city police have right now. The infrastructure is already in place. And we have probably 800 high-resolution cameras on this campus. So I tell people, if you pick your nose, we probably got you picking your nose. A lot of them are in the residence halls as well. Additional initiatives that we have, we've just undergone a UT system audit of clerical compliance. What they said about UTC is that we're the best practice for the state. We probably have the highest compliment in terms of how we responded to that. We have a UT system audit of our Minors on Campus program. The TBI actually came in and did an audit doing their audit of the police department records, found really no problems with our records management and all. We had a TEMA review, Tennessee Emergency Management Agency review of our emergency planning. We had a fiasco with an active shooter situation in Fletcher Hall. Y'all remember that? Where about 150 police officers show up, which is a good thing. At the end, if you had one, you want that to show up. But at the end of the day, they were looking for a Chattanooga police officer. We didn't know that at the time until we got into it. But we did have TEMA come in and say, look, what are we doing here? Do we have a best practice? TEMA made a few minor recommendations, but again, they said, you're probably the best practice for the state in how you handle this on the UTC campus. In this audit report, they said campuses haven't had an MOU updated in 13 years. Well, ours was just updated in 2016. This is a memorandum of understanding between the city police and the campus police about how we operate together, jurisdictions, what happens on calls for support and all of that. And in fact, we're doing an upgrade at the end of the month of the 2016 document. Right, Yusuf? All right, I've called on legal counsel. Yusuf's been looking at the document for it. We have monthly reviews of campus lighting and emergency phones. In fact, we've got an information management system where every light, exterior light on this campus is cataloged. If it goes out, a report comes up automatically, goes to the physical plant, they automatically get that light back on, right? And the police are doing surveys there too. Regular inspections of safety, lab inspections, air quality tests. In fact, we had all of our housing looked at for mold, and Yancey will tell you that. And every month, we're in the residence hall making sure we're not exposed to any hazards for mold or mildew in those residence halls. But we had some findings, and some of the findings came back to our campus, and we talked to them about these findings, but when you're doing a performance audit, sometimes the finding is there, you just have to respond to it. One of the findings, number 4, was that UTC did not issue a timely warning for a crime that posed a serious or continuing threat. What happened here was that in Douglas Heights, the apartments across ML King had a shooting. And it turned out to be an isolated incident. People knew each other in that shooting. The issue with Douglas Heights, though, is that it's not in our police jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction goes along ML King, right? The other thing about this was that the city police was in constant contact with our police department while this was going on, telling us there is no continuing threat. We know who the suspect is, number 1. In fact, we're securing warrants for that person right now. So we knew that there were no continuing threats. We didn't see a need to put out a warning on that, but this performance audit said you should have put a warning out with regards to that. We differed about that. We met the Cleary guidelines, but what I said going forward is that perhaps we should look at apartments that are in close proximity. We don't mind looking at that. We'll take a look at that in our policies. It's not that we're in violation or anything. It just may make common sense that you might want to do something. I always have to think about that if I'm a parent and I'm reading something in the newspaper or on the news, and I call up my student and say, did you know that? That's what we're responding to. So we did fine. In fact, the comptroller, when he brought this up, he presented to the legislature. He said, but UTC felt like they didn't have a need to do that, but it still stayed in the audit. That was one of the findings. So I thought you should be aware of that, okay? Any questions about that?
So, how many miles away from campus are we now responsible
Yeah.
for?
I was gonna say, doesn't that expose
There
us
are,
from
there
a
are a
risk
couple
perspective?
more murders that occurred within miles of campus, I don't, you know,
That's what you deal with.
and my
Yeah.
office and.
And that's why we tried to say it should be identified in the jurisdiction that you define for the police department, right? So we're talking about that statewide.
Well, it's close enough that if the shooter had been moving towards campus, but they were seen driving away, the Chattanooga police knew who it was, they wanted to arrest that person, and I think we were working more with them to try to keep a lower profile so that we could see that individual apprehended.
Yes.
But they were seen driving away from our area, and that's part of why, in that case, it was a Saturday night, like early Sunday morning, maybe we're better off not to do anything. So,
And you know, as you said, with auditors, they have a certain perspective, and it's not necessarily a complete black and white, right or wrong. It's a judgment call.
Yeah, you said that very well. Thank you.
So Richard, who within the organization decides to make the call, to put out the warning, not to put out the warning? what type of warning to put out?
It's the police chief, and if he's not there, it's Robbie Robinson, our Director of Emergency Services,
Okay.
in consultation with University Relations. It's almost an automatic call into University Relations as well. Right? If there's some controversy, they'll call me, I'll call the chancellor one, but they generally handle that at that level. We don't have a real problem with it. We had an incident a week ago and call went out, warning went out right away.
I'm sure many people feel like they're 24-hour-a-day employees, but they aren't all available, so I didn't know if there was a specific protocol that we went through.
Yeah, chief's always 24/7.
Okay.
Dr. Brown, now have we gotten warnings out for other incidents at Douglas Heights? Like, was this just a specific incident that was decided not to be sent out? Are there other instances that could occur at Douglas Heights that we would receive information about? It's just that judgment call by the police chief?
This was the only one that was
Okay.
really cited
Okay.
at the end of the day, and Douglas is still outside our jurisdiction. What interests me in Douglas though is that our students do live there,
Mhm.
so I have to be really careful. I told the police, if there's any kind of continuing threat, put a notification out. Err on the side of safety, and that's our standard. Audit number 6, the finding was that information contained in police reports, clearer daily crime logs, and Title IX reports did not match. Look at this now, this was a typo that they saw on a form with the young lady who made the typo saying, oops, I made a typo, and it still made it in the report. At the end of the day, changed it right in front of the auditor, and it still made it in. But no substantive data was inaccurate or missing. It was a typo. If you've done an Excel spreadsheet, the box was in the wrong place. That's it, but neither here nor there. Finding number 8, due to a lack of documentation, auditors could not determine whether 6 police incident reports were reviewed by supervisors or whether 3 UTC investigations were appropriately closed. Okay, when you talk about 6 reports, let's talk about, in essence, of 5,000 reports, right? The 3 that were not signed were electronic reports. They were actually reviewed by the supervisor and electronically submitted, but it still did not meet their criteria. That's why that got there. 3 investigations were appropriately closed. When there are no, and the police department told me, said, we explicitly told the auditor that there were no one to investigate, there were no witnesses, nothing to these incidents at all. And that's why they use a classification for closing out these reports, administratively closed. There's nothing you can do about it. Still, that did not rise to the level of the auditor. That's what this was, okay? 6 reports were not signed and reviewed by supervisors. Investigations were appropriately closed, given the lack of any video or review or suspects in question. So there was nothing they could do.
So do they have
report.
recommendations on what they would like to see it, how it would be closed?
If I,
You love that, don't you?
I was gonna say, there's a different classification we talked to the auditors about that we're gonna use going forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
More technicality.
Just a that's what I'm getting at. It's really a technicality here. And number 9, UT board had not yet addressed the UT campus's physical security features. They questioned the investment in campus security previously outlined. And so on February the 5th, we will get a visit by the UT president and a committee of the board to take a look at what we're doing here with campus police and security. And we're delighted to have them on the campus. I will tell you that. We're glad they're coming. So they can really see what we're actually doing in terms of the campus police. We've got a beautiful emergency communications center. In fact, this year, the campus police received full state police accreditation. This is the same accreditation that Chattanooga, Memphis, all these police departments, 185 standards they had to comply with. And so we're delighted that they're coming to take a look at what we're doing. We don't mean, audits are good things. They help you improve your practice. They really do. So we don't mind audits at all. But we wanted to put those into the proper context. Sometimes in these audits, you don't get a chance to tell the full story.
How many campus police do we actually have here?
Right now, we've got 27 headed towards 30. Chancellor Engel has been very good for investment in campus police numbers. I've asked for 9 additional officers because we're in an urban environment. At the end of the day, we've already supplied 4 of those. Gonna recommend another one this year, so in the next 2 years, we'll be up to full speed. In fact, when they looked at the number of personnel per population, our campus was one of the tops in the state. So we're headed in the right direction and doing a lot of the right things. Just wanted to give you an overview because you may be asked.
Let's ask for a new auditor next time.
Does the university, I mean, do they have an analysis on like crime and so forth and what they recommend to the universities?
No, they did not get that in depth, but the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the TBR, does do a crime on campus, full data look at crime on campus. We have very low incidence of violence on this campus at all. And we're sitting in an urban environment in a city where there are all kinds of violent things going on around us. I think we've done very well to be sitting in the heart of downtown Chattanooga on a campus this size.
You got some of these sororities down off the Central Avenue and
Yep.
turned it over behind. Is that within the jurisdiction of the campus police?
We are looking at our MOU now, trying to redefine that to make sure we can respond to those places when the city police calls us.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
we
an
can
interesting
Yeah, we can.
debate, because we've called the police and had Chattanooga PD show up and they're like, oh, well, you need to call UTC PD, and then UTC will show up. But it's kind of hit or miss. They're not exactly sure.
Well, under our new MOU that we're looking at, we're gonna really have some language in there that says that the city police, at their discretion, can call the university police for mutual aid, and that we can respond to those fraternities on 10th and 11th Street behind the Arts and Sciences School and in Fort Wood. But it will be based on the city police calling us in. We don't want to expand our jurisdiction there because I don't want to be responding to cats up a tree in somebody else's neighborhood, right? Because we're trying to take care of the main campus, but we do want to respond when our students are involved. We've talked to Dr. Freeman a little bit about that, right? And we think it's better for our police to respond to that because we know the students a lot better.
Dr. Potts?
And it sounds like the communication would be between
Get your-
the city and campus not putting the students in the middle, which I think is what you
Yeah.
were
Absolutely.
saying. Of
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
communication being between them.
Yeah, that's
Just
pretty
it's
much how it's
handled,
been.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So this was in your report, but it falls under Dr. Freeman, as the mental health. That was, if I actually read this report, all 100 and whatever pages of it, I did read it. And, it was over Christmas, we got it over Christmas, so I read it. And I was interested in the mental health findings, which was one slide in yours, but not reported on. And I was wondering if you could give some information on what we're doing to address it, because I believe the main issue was we don't have enough staff to deal with the mental health issues that we have on campus.
Yeah,
I was noticing that.
Yeah,
we did bring in a board that we attended a health summit, and so each of the UT campuses took an opportunity to go back and talk about what we were doing and how we were addressing it as a campus and then overall as a UT system to see if we could leverage ideas that are happening across the other campuses. We had someone come in from NASPO, one of the National Student Affairs organizations, to talk about what campuses are doing across the country. And so it is certainly one of those things that it consumes a lot of time, for me, in terms of what happens with students outside the classroom. And so there are 4 sort of entities within the division that handle and work with counseling, mental health, suicide prevention strategies for the campus. And you kind of see them listed on the board with the Counseling Center, the Center for Student Wellbeing, the Disability Resource Center, and also the outreach area that's there. And so those areas meet. Dr. Brown had within his presentation the stuff about the care team so that we can talk about students on a holistic basis and to make sure that we're not missing things that happen with the students. The very good thing is that our students are using counseling services because when I was in school, and no one wants to hear about those days, but when I was in school, it was not the popular thing to do. And now it seems that the stigma has been removed in a lot of ways from students seeking counseling services. And so we have, on any given opportunity, lots of students who are visiting counseling services, so much so that we've added a counselor this year. We added a psychiatric nurse practitioner this year. We are adding a clinical case manager who also has the ability to see cases as well within the counseling center. The Center for Student Wellbeing is there, where we talk about things like alcohol and drug abuse, and trying to mitigate some of the factors there. Suicide prevention, there's a new suicide prevention policy that's also there that we will implement and do training for faculty and staff to identify the signs of suicide for students. And so there is a lot that's happening around mental health for the campus.
So I'm just to tell the board, because I'm aware, I work with the person who runs the counseling center, because she also is a faculty member, and we had 20 attempted suicides this past fall,
Yeah.
which
On this campus?
on this campus, and we had the terminology was one completed.
Yeah.
So
Complete.
that's the terminology that they use. Also, and I don't know the exact number of this, but I know from a student, the wait time for appointments is 8 weeks. So you will get in to see someone immediately. If you have an emergent problem, they will see you immediately. But I had a student in a class who told me about a problem in early September. I advised her to go to the counseling center. She got her appointment in November. So, and the other issue is, this is just not a problem on campus. There aren't mental health professionals in Chattanooga who have open slots for people. We are backed up, and not only in the city of Chattanooga, but other places. They'll tell you a story of an athlete who had a counselor in North Carolina, where he was from, and he was missing class because he was driving to North Carolina to see his counselor, because that was the best option for him for mental health counseling. So that is my concern, is that I'm concerned that, and I see you're almost right behind Dr. Hale's head. It says the recommendation is for 1,000 to 1,500 students. I thought the recommendation was 1,000. And we're not in that norm right now, are we?
We are not currently, but I'm hoping that as we go through the new budget process, I have it as a requested position in the new budget process coming up, and so I'm hoping that we will get there. But that is the professional university standard, 1 to 1,500 students. One counselor per 1,500 students that's there. It is this issue around mental health and what we do on the campus, as I said, is one that consumes a lot of my time around what we do and our ability to address the issue across our campus. And you're right, it's not one that's just happening at UTC. It is a national sort of issue. Some of you may have seen the director of counseling at Penn State committed suicide, had a completed suicide. And so it is one that's permeating throughout the country. And it's a tough one to deal with, because on one hand, you want students using the services. On the other one, how do you keep up with, the demand that's there? So we have done a couple of things. I will say we've done a couple of things. One is we are reaching out and partnering with some community agencies to try to help us. But as you've stated very eloquently, they are overbooked as well, and so it makes it difficult to do that. The other thing we've done is a call out to all of our faculty and staff here on campus that are licensed counselors that can provide services, to try to get them to help us with offsetting the issue. So if we have folks who are licensed who can see students, then certainly giving them an opportunity to try to do so as well.
I know there's a plan for an on-campus clinic using the counselor. We have a counselor program, a graduate program in counselor.
Yeah.
But right now, they're maxed out at their number of students based on the faculty ratio for their accreditation. They can't have any more students because they don't have enough faculty. So but that's, I think, to be started next fall. I'm not 100% on that.
That is the goal.
Right?
We're working through the plan right now to partner with our Masters in Counseling program to allow some of the students in the program to work with licensed clinical practitioners to help us with reviewing and seeing and talking with students
As their
that
field,
come in
like,
for,
their field
yes,
training.
that is
Yeah.
correct. For some of the, for lack of a better term, lower level issues, you know, for students that come in that need to see someone using the Masters in Counseling program as well as a third tier attack to make sure that we can address some of the demand.
The President did make a pitch to the legislature for some specialized funding
Yeah.
allocation to all the campuses to
Problem-
address this issue.
I think it's one of those things that's running away from us. There's only so much we can do. It's just, I mean, when I heard that 20 suicide number attempts, I was shocked. And we've had a 20%, Nancy, increase in students coming to the counseling center.
We did, yeah.
And some of that, as he said, is the removal of stigma. But it also is our students have so many things that they are dealing with that we don't realize what they're dealing with.
Well, and it's tough to get to learning when you are dealing with issues that are, you know, that are front and center to them around
Yeah.
just basic needs. And so how you do that and the format that you do it in a way that allows them to continue in a healthy learning environment has been a challenge.
Well, as a board member, I will say that I encourage Richard to consider if for this extra budget money that we have, that $1 million, some of it could go to student support in that area, I would
He-
encourage that.
Yancey's on the list
Yeah.
for consideration.
I know, everyone has calls though, but we won't be successful in the
Tyler
other
and I had him
area,
on the top of the list, he's on there.
you know, if we
Well,
can't
I-
support our students in this way.
Had I understood at one point that UTC was offering counseling even to the community, or is that a legend and some rumor?
Not in the last 18 to 20 months that I've been pushed. I mean, we've had so much of a demand for our students that we've not had much of an opportunity to do
Right.
anything in the community. Now, I could say through an MOU process, one of the things we have talked about is in an emergent situation. You know, as we would have an experience where if something happened on our campus, we could call community agencies in and they would help us in an emergency sort of situation, that we might offer the same sort of service, you know, out if something were to happen in the city that was a major catastrophe or something. But on a general, normal basis, no.
Because, you know, part of my system, we have behavioral health is
Yeah.
integrated, and I mirror, you know, finding psychiatrists nowadays is just a rarity. You
Right.
just can't find enough.
Yeah.
And nurse practitioners, they're trying to supplement, but that's got a long way to come.
Sure.
It's well beyond the budgetary issue. It's, you know, the money can be there, it's just finding
You can't
qualified
find them.
people to fill the slots. And
Mhm.
I think you have to look more
Mhm.
at partnering with outside resources to meet
So,
that demand.
Does it have to be licensed individuals? And where I was going with this is I know that even working with United Way, because they come in to help our, you know, staff and so forth, and I think they have even tried to start kind of gathering some information on counseling that maybe even churches have had, you know, that sponsorship. And so somewhat to your lower level things, I don't know if that's presented as a resource or if it has to be accredited. I mean, I know you guys are highly regulated, so.
A licensed person does remove risk for us in many ways, and so you know, we are trying these avenues that allow us to use licensed practitioners, you know, to do this. We may get to a point, I hope we don't, we may get to a point where we need to consider other community resources, you know, to assist.
I don't know if this is on here, but they have a lot of group therapy.
It is.
And
It's
I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just half of them, you don't have to be a patient, you can just show up. Some of them actually require you to be a patient being seen to participate in the group therapy, but not all of it.
Right.
And when you look at the list, it's staggering how much different things that they offer, things that they have, so.
It's group therapy sessions, motivational interviewing,
But you were talking
all
within
sorts
the
of
community,
sessions.
not just the UTC community.
No, I'm talking about the UTC community,
UTC.
just all the things that the
Gotcha.
Counseling Center, the Center for
Student
Student
Wellbeing.
Wellbeing, they call it WH, right? Is that, no, that's the
No.
different one, that's the
Yeah.
other one. But the things that those two do, I mean, I just saw there's a dog on campus today, I think, a therapy dog, right upstairs, if you wanna go see, there's a therapy dog.
This is a good discussion, and I know what I've read and heard, and I realize it is a big issue. If any of us have any thoughts about it later, I'm sure Yancy will take a call for advice. We have any other business? Yusuf is gonna discuss vacancies.
Yeah, so the next scheduled board meeting is May 7th, from my understanding. We are required by the state statute to select the new student board member to replace Ben.
We just got it.
We just got it. Sorry. So his term is 1 year, it ends June 30th, I believe. Per state statute, we're supposed to appoint his replacement by April 15th. So I'm looking at ways we can get that appointment done. It may be that we have to call a special meeting in advance of our May 7th regular meeting, but I will provide that guidance to Terry and the Chancellor to report that on to you. So
This is the thing where we can't have electronic meetings, right? We have to be in person.
that is a restriction.
I said something about that.
One last thing I want to.
My proposal was 2 years, but I understand it has to go back through the legislature,
Right, I mean, it's
so.
in the state statute, that's why it'd be so difficult to get that changed.
Did you say we had to have an appointment by April 15?
Yes.
You know, when Benjamin got the job, the student council had these interviews and people's applications and all, we're already right into February.
Well, that's the good segue I needed.
Yeah.
So that process is about to start again.
Yes, it is.
And so I believe one of the requirements is that 3 of the board members need to be in attendance at the presentation. So that's another thing that Terry will be following up the board on.
And we're working on a timeline, in fact,
fact,
Nancy,
I have
just
one.
got
We
one
just need to-
today.
oh, you did, okay.
So we can, if we work with the timeline that has been suggested, we'll be able to have something by beginning of February.
And I believe we've limited applicants now to, how should I say this, without too many infractions. Just the rules, the campus rules. Okay. Any other? Next meeting is May the 7th at 3 o'clock.
Same place.
Same place. And, Chance,
There's 2 things we have going on. One, search for Dean of Arts and Sciences, which is an ongoing search, and we're just gearing up with the UC Foundation to search for a vice chancellor for development, alumni affairs, and executive director of the UC Foundation. So, met today, we're looking at interim leadership because Brian Rowland resigned last week. So we will get that moving, and I think we've got a firm we all agree on that there's an outstanding contract with. They were going to run a search for assistant vice chancellor for alumni affairs, and we're going to move them over to this, and then we'll run the alumni affairs assistant vice chancellor search after the vice chancellor's hired.
What firm is that?
Vice chancellor?
No,
for
I said, what firm is it?
Aspen Leadership Group. They ran the search that brought Marty Smith here as the associate vice chancellor. They're currently running the search for vice chancellor for advancement and alumni at UT Martin. And so they've been on our campus. They're working with UTFI and UT Martin. They know us, they know UT. Their price structure looks as competitive as anybody else. Mike Costello, the chair of the foundation board, was very comfortable with them. So was Kerry Witcher, the UTFI president, and I felt this is a good firm. They know us. We had a great pool when Marty Smith was hired. So I don't see any reason not to do that. So, and we are, maybe we have the 2 co-chairs in the room if they'll agree. One has, I've at least passed his name by. The other, I haven't, but the last search was co-chaired by Richard Brown and Fred DeCosimo, and we were hoping that the two of them might agree to do this again. And we're gonna get the search committee that we used last time so that we can look at how many people and how many foundation and whatever we did. The affiliation
Yeah,
agreement may
affiliation
spell out a process also, but we'll follow whatever we need to. But if you two are willing, I had forgotten to mention this morning. And Mike told me Fred didn't say no when I brought it up, so that must means he'll do it.
You know, the last time it was for the Vice Chancellor was Bucky and I and BB on that. We had good selection.
And that was when Buddy Letourneau ran, and he's retired.
Can I
Yes.
ask about the Chastain search?
Yes.
When will the candidates be on campus?
That's.
Or in general, like, are you open to
I don't
them?
have the timeline
Okay.
committed to memory, but the application will continue to accept applications, but people were guaranteed full consideration if they applied on or before January 22nd. The other thing that I can tell you about that is that I received a preliminary report. So Daniel Pack is chairing that committee. I received a preliminary report from Daniel late last week, and on Friday of last week we had 70 completed applications and several more that were in partial completion stages that the folks at Parker Executive Search in Atlanta who are running the search for us believe will be completed before the deadline.
May I have a motion to, anything else? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? We're out of here. I gotta go get a haircut.